What would you do if a couple of days before settlement, your bank or lawyer rang you up and said you were a couple of grand short to settle the property? That's exactly what happened to me 10 years ago when I bought my first house. When I bought my first house, I was so excited, but the bank didn't tell me about all these different buying associated fees. I had to find that out the hard way. I actually had to borrow the money that I was short from my own mother. And that's why I'm making this video, because I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through, because hey, my mum did borrow the money. Thanks, mum. But what happens if you haven't got someone like my mother to give you the money? Things can get way worse. If you don't settle a property in Australia, you can be sued for damages, lose your deposit. There's a whole lot of things and you just don't want to be in that position. So I'm going to show you, if you buy a property in Australia, all the buying associated fees so you can see exactly what you're going to be up for. And the best way to learn is by role play. So let's pretend that you bought a property for $1 million. Okay, look at all the buying associated fees. There's almost a dozen different things here. The first one, government fees. This will definitely be the biggest cost when you buy a property in Australia. The best way to work it out is download the Mad Loans app. We're on Android and the Apple Store. Click on the Mad Loans app, go to stamp duty calculator. Now for this scenario, we're in Queensland, primary residence. We're putting in $1 million. And the fees breakdown will be the following. As you can see there, you got stamp duty $30,850, mortgage registration $181. That's about $200 now, and transfer fee about $3. So all up, that $34,000. Like I said, guys, government fees will be the biggest fee when you buy a property in this country. Side note, guys, if you're first home buyers, there are some concessions state to state. But in Queensland, for argument's sake, if you spend under 500 grand, you don't pay any stamp duty. However, you still got to pay a transfer and registration fee. Don't get caught out. On top of that, when I bought my first property, I was in a fixed mindset. The government made me feel like I had to spend that under 500 grand or less to not pay stamp duty, which ended up costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm going to cover that later in the video. Okay, next up on the list is conveyancers, or lawyers, sometimes they call themselves. Now let's go get Costa Di Matteo to explain what a lawyer does. And this guy actually studied law, but he's not a lawyer, but he studied law. Now guys, when you buy property in Australia, you got to get a conveyancer to act on your behalf. They cost how much?
Normally between $1,800 to $2,000, depending on the number of searches you want conducted.
Okay, and good point, searches. So there's a lot of standard searches and then there's extras. Like if you're going to buy a property and you definitely want to knock it down and rebuild, you probably want to get the searches about the sewer and can you build over the sewer? Is it koala habitat? You can't knock down the trees. So again, you'll lean on us as your broker or your lawyer a lot about this sort of stuff, and they're the ones who are going to tell you what searches to get and what not. What else? Like when things get bad, Costa, which we don't want to see, but who do you rely on?
That's where you really need a good conveyancer, because some clients go to like these really cheap conveyancers that you'd never even heard about them.
And that's a nightmare. Don't do that, please.
You really need somebody who supports you, especially if, for example, there is a structural issue or a building and pest issue, and you're trying to get that price dropped to cover the the fees that you would have to fork out to replace the deck or whatever issue.
So you want a good lawyer when you do a building and pest and there's 20 grand of damages, and you want a reduction, you want a good lawyer to help you negotiate with that. Look, there's other things lawyers do, but that probably covers the majority of it. Mad tip, guys, is do a $20-30. Mad gets a discount. I think it's 20% discount. Prop check. Get a prop check report. It does so much stuff, and for $20-30, it's invaluable. Definitely recommend that one if you're buying a property. But back to lawyers. Lawyers pick up things you never think of. Things like a caveat on a property or an easement. Now guys, this can hold up your whole purchase. If a caveat means there's going through a separation and the ex-wife or ex-husband has put something onto that title, which means it may not even be able to go through. So a lot of the times our customers go to buy a property, they sign a contract, it goes to the lawyers, they do their searches, and sometimes it picks up on stuff that you just can't know. So you have to get a lawyer to pick up on this sort of stuff. Alright gang, now let's talk building and pest reports. Now this can cost anywhere from say $500 to $1,000. So let's just meet you in the middle, $800 here. So now let's cover everything about building and press reports, why they're so important and critical when you buy your first house, and how you can actually save yourself over $50,000 by getting one of these reports. Look, a lot of you watching this, I don't think you're builders or building and pest inspectors. However, you've got to pay for the report. They're going to check the integrity of your decks. I always remember something once that I saw in Paddington. Someone bought a property, they didn't get a building and pest, and it collapsed, and 3 or 4 people got seriously injured. So you want to make sure that what you're buying is structurally sound. Another thing that we get building and pest for is PowerPoints. There's a lot of handymen doing electrical, and it's dangerous. So a good building and pest inspector is make sure that all these PowerPoints are earthed. So if little kids put forks in there, they're not going to get electrocuted, okay?
And also, guys, we want to obviously look out for termites. We do live in Queensland. Queenslanders are quite popular, so we want to make sure that there's nothing crawling around destroying the house. George, didn't you help someone save 50 grand?
That's a good one. So building and pest obviously helps people find things that they couldn't see, like termites and structural issues.
Yep.
But guys, negotiation tactic, that's my favorite thing about a building and pest. Once, one of our customers saved 50 grand by getting a builder to go through and fault all the damages, too many to actually find and edit up. If I find the email, just show it next to me here and zoom through it, because there was heaps of small things. But he got 50 grand reduction. The funny thing, Costa, is he ended up knocking down the house. He basically won the lotto.
They knocked down the house?
He knocked down the house.
So
what the funny thing is, he got the 50 grand reduction, but he knocked down the house anyway. It doesn't even matter. All right, next up on buying associated fees is body corporate. Of course, not applicable if you're buying a house. So this specifically, the body corporate adjustment, is what caught me out over 10 years ago when I bought my first house. This is a lot of things that bankers and brokers don't tell their customers about. And that's why I'm glad you're watching this video, because you're not going to get stuck on this one. Body corporate adjustments. Now, this will be probably about $750, but it could be way more or way less, depends on what you buy. For example, if you buy a property in a high rise with 3 elevators, pool, resort style facilities, you can expect to pay more body corporate. Whereas if you bought a property in one of those old 6-packs with no lifts, walk upstairs, low maintenance, that would be really cheap because it doesn't cost much to maintain the property. So guys, I want to explain to you what admin fund and sinking fund is, because there's 2 things to body corporate fees. So for example, if I was to just look at this, even this building over here, they would have an admin fund and a sinking fund. When they want to redo their roof, like major repairs, that's going to be the sinking fund. So when you buy, you got to make sure there's enough money in that sinking fund for this serious stuff. Where I've seen it go wrong is sometimes when high rises, the elevator breaks. If there's only 20 grand in the sinking fund, they're gonna have to ask for a special levy, and all the people who live there, if it's 100 grand to do the job and there is 100 units, everyone's gonna pay an extra $1,000. If there's only 10 people living there, that's an extra 10 grand. I've seen special levies up to 20. So when you buy, you gotta make sure there's heaps of money in the sinking fund. Now the admin fund. Admin fund is for stuff like this. So all the gardens, keeping the lawns under control, keeping your gardens under control, your hedges nice and clean. Whereas a sinking fund is for the big stuff, which I explained earlier. When you buy a property and you look at the body corporate disclosure statement, you've got to see how much is in that sinking fund, because that sinking fund is for the big stuff. All right, gang, next up is your rates and water. Welcome to property ownership. Okay, so rates is for something that you probably wouldn't expect, actually. It's for the maintenance of your local parks, your local streets, all the footpath in front of your house, mowing of the lawn.
And it's for taking out your rubbish. Thank you.
And we get to enjoy these beautiful facilities in almost every suburb. As you can see, Costa, what are you doing over there, mate? Get back to work. Usually in Brisbane, the streets, you can say, and footpaths are very well maintained. That's part of our rates. And our water is exactly what you think it's for, okay? Water is for our toilets to flush. Water is for our showers. Our rates and our water is for bin collection and sewerage. So now you know what rates, water and body corporate does, but let me show you how people get caught out and how this is a big fee that people miss. We pay this quarterly. There's 4 quarters in a year. Let's say the quarter that we're talking about now is from the January to the March. So the owner before you has already paid their rates, they've already paid their water, and they've already paid their body corporate for the whole 3 months. You sign a contract to buy their particular property on the 18th of January. The property that you bought settles here on the 10th of February. You won't have to pay for the rates or water or body corporate while they were still living in it, but you will have to do a refund, is an easier terminology than adjustment. So call it refund for what they've paid for when you move in from the 10th of February to the end of March. So this is called formally an adjustment. This is done by your lawyers. Adjustments vary depending on the property you buy. If you buy a unit in a high rise, like I said before, with high body corporate, the adjustment could be thousands. So make sure when you buy your property, you know exactly how much those adjustments are going to be before you sign a contract. Don't get caught out. P.S. Quick warning, if you're watching this and you want to buy on the canals, for example, Birkdale Aquatic Paradise or Robbie Bay or somewhere down the Gold Coast on the canals, their rates are traditionally double the normal rates. So rather than being like $600 a quarter for rates, you're probably paying $1,200. Why? It's because of all that extra money dredging canals and stuff like that. Don't get caught out. The rates were $600 approximately, and water's generally about $300 per quarter. And guys, if you're liking what you see, please hit that subscribe button. We'd love educating our customers. The why we come to work is we help all Australians achieve their version of financial freedom. Thank you. All right, gang, next up is insurance. Now, most banks have it as a settlement condition to have building insurance. So this can range from about, I'm gonna say 80 to 120 bucks a month. Look, let's call it 100 bucks a month, if I was to put it on a monthly thing. Now, how can you explain the difference between building and contents? So let's say that this is your house, we cut the roof off. We turn the house upside down and the contents come out. So that is how you can do it. Things like furniture, TVs, rugs, all the stuff that would fall out of a house would be your contents. Not compulsory, but you've got to have building insurance. Now, a lot of banks make it compulsory for you to have building insurance as a settlement condition. So you got to have it just before settlement, otherwise the bank won't settle. This is because traditionally the bank holds most of the security of your property. Something also important to cover is in Queensland, you're gonna have to have insurance the day you sign a contract. If the house burns down during the signing of the contract and settlement, it's the buyer's responsibility. It is different state to state, so if you're watching this from other states, check with a lawyer, the legalities about that. However, in Queensland, we know for certain it's your responsibility. So if you sign a contract, get insurance the same day. Now, side note, if you're buying a unit, generally the building insurance is part of your body corporate fees, and you have to get contents insurance separately. All right, Matt family, now let's talk bank fees. We're nearly getting the end of our buying associated fees. As you can see, there's so many. Now, bank fees vary from lender to lender, and I'm about to show you how going to a different lender could save you $6,000 in bank fees in a moment. Now, bank fees vary. A lot of banks waive application fees. A lot of banks waive the cost of the valuation, but they almost all have a settlement fee. A settlement fee is usually $150 to $300 depending upon your lender. If you get guarantors, a lot of banks charge an extra $200 to $400 to have guarantors for the extra paperwork. There are other things called rate lock. That's when you buy a property and there's, say for argument, like a 30-day settlement or a 60-day settlement, and you want to guarantee the fixed rate today, which a lot of people are doing now because we're in a rising rate market. Now that fee can be anywhere from $750 to a percentage of your loan. Some banks charge 0.15% of a loan, so if your loan's $1 million, that's an extra $1,500 of fees. Now the biggest thing here I want to show you is the difference in lenders' mortgage insurance from lender to lender. So we got 5 banks, all of which you would know. We did a scenario of buying for $1 million, putting a 10% deposit down. And look at the difference here, guys. There's almost $6,000 difference. And if you do that over a 30-year loan, that's like $28K of interest you would have paid. So as you can see, you don't want to leave it to luck. Go to a professional, go to a mortgage broker who knows what they're doing. If you have to pay LMI, they will show you all the different banks and how much they charge to help make a decision, because sometimes the cheapest rate isn't the winner, If they're $6 cheaper in lender's mortgage insurance, that has to be a major factor when picking your bank. So there's heaps of different ways to get LMI waived. I'll be doing a video on it very soon, so make sure you please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date. Okay, so for this scenario, let's put $600 for the fees. And let's put 0 for rate lock. Okay, one of the last fees, and most first home buyers watching this will probably say, I don't need this. Removalist. Okay, so a removalist can cost anywhere from nothing if you use a mate's ute, or you go hire something for 60 bucks, to thousands of dollars. For this scenario, I'm gonna put nothing because most first home buyers generally get a mate to help them out and give them a couple of pizzas for helping so. Another warning, change your mindset to fixed mindset to growth mindset. When I bought my first property, I specifically spent 500 grand trying to keep myself under the threshold to save a couple of grand of stamp duty, whereas I could afford a lot more money than what I did, and I could have bought a way better property which would have grew way more. The first property that I ever bought was a unit in Kangaroo Point. I was in a fixed mindset, mainly driven by the government's first home owner grant. See, they really wanted me to spend under $500,000 to get 7 grand and to not pay stamp duty. Now, I could actually afford a bit more money than that 500 grand, but because I wanted to save a couple of $1,000s in stamp duty and I wanted to get free $7,000, it made me buy this unit. Now, this unit I kept for 8 years. 8 years I had this property. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit. I paid 515 grand. I put these tiles in. I put the new downlights in. I put speakers in the roof. These blinds were electric. I put air conditioning in, I carpeted it, you name it, I did it. After 8 years, I sold the property because it was holding me back to buy another one. I lost $70,000, team, after 8 years. If I had a different mindset, or if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have bought the unit, I would have bought a house. I would have bought a house close to the city, you see, because land is rare. And now I'm 34 years old, married with a couple of kids, and we live in a house because we need a backyard for our kids to go on the swings. But what I've learned from my own experience is my house has almost doubled in value, and I've only owned it for 3 years. And I owned that for 8 years. So when you look to buy your house, make sure you think, where are you going to be in 10 years? And is it going to be a smart investment? So team, I just worked out all those buying associated fees. It came to $39,150. I always round up to the closest thousand. I'm going to put 40 grand. So when you buy a property for $1 million, the fees of 40 means you actually need $1,040,000 to buy that property. So now you can see how important it is to go through all the buying associated costs so you don't get caught out like I did over 10 years ago. If you like what you see, if you want a mortgage broker who's proactive, who explains everything in your language, please give the MAD team a call. We would love to help you buy your first house. Thank you very much, and you have a mad day.